Hello and welcome to TripToGo, where we bring you closer to the most inspiring travel destinations. I'm your host Chari, and today we're so excited to explore one of Africa's most iconic and diverse countries, Kenya. Hello everyone, welcome to another info session with TripToGo, and joining us today is Mr. Evan Trippel. He's a local DMC from Kenya. Thank you so much for being with us today.
Thank you.
And without further ado, I'm just gonna jump right in with the questions. For travelers who may not know much about Kenya, beyond safaris of course, how would you describe the country as a travel destination?
Well, obviously it's very well known for its safari. That's what made it iconic. But I think one thing that really always brings me back to Kenya is just the generosity of the people. I mean, there's something that's almost legendary about that African service that we've all heard about, and it's kind of set the bar on an international level in terms of what people can aspire to. So there's just a personality to the country that it's very difficult to find elsewhere. But there's also a very rich history to Kenya as well that a lot of people don't really know about, even pre-colonization. So there's a lot of museums and a lot of stories that can be told as well. It's also one of the few places that's, in a sense, very engaged with Kenyan modernity, and that would be the Maasai people, and to a lesser extent the Samburu people as well. So these aren't just, a lot of the time when we think of African tribalism, we think about, people or tribes that are located in the middle of the African jungle or middle of nowhere, and they're not really present. But you'll see people who are, wearing more traditional garb and holding on to their traditional beliefs that are walking around the streets of Nairobi or Mombasa or just basically anywhere. So it's a really nice kind of blend of the old world with modernity as well. So there's a lot that you can get out of Kenya, not just from an animal perspective, but also from a people perspective too.
That's awesome, thank you. And what are some must-visit regions or landmarks that you'd recommend for first-time visitors?
Yeah, I mean, the Masai Mara is obviously a massive to-do. Everyone who has seen anything about Africa in the National Geographic has seen the Masai Mara, and it is a heavy hitter. It really does live up to the name. Amboseli is also one of those places, which is that place where you see the Kilimanjaro in the background. That's always iconic, both for the wildlife, but also just for the backdrop of that mountain. And then most people wouldn't really consider this like a first time for a Kenya traveler, but I think Samburu in the far north is just absolutely stunning. So I would go with those three.
Perfect. And can you tell us more about the coastal gems in Kenya? Because when you say Kenya, people think of, the safaris and all that.
So there's really a few communities that are based on the coast. So there's Mombasa, this major port city, that has a very rich history, being colonized by multiple occupying forces over the years. But also the beaches there are absolutely fantastic, and really world class and very overlooked for whatever reason. And then as you can increasingly go further north up the coast, you have much less visited places. So Watamu is there's a lot of development in Watamu now with more 5-star beach resorts coming through, and that's only an hour north of Nairobi. You have Malindi, which is a very small historic community, fishing community, but a lot of history there with Portuguese early exploration, with circumnavigating the African continent. And then even further north, you have Lamu, which is very close to the Somali border, but it does have that very authentic Swahili culture.
Perfect, thank you. And Kenya is famous for the Great Migration, of course, and its national parks. What makes the country's wildlife experiences truly unique compared to other African destinations?
there's a huge commitment to rhino rehabilitation in more so northern central Kenya, which you really don't see in most other African countries, South Africa excluded. But also more specifically in the extreme north, there are definitely some unique species, Garanuk, and there's also the Somali ostrich. There's definitely aspects to the far north that where there's rare animals that you really can't find in other places. There's a ton of different national parks. And there are a ton of different animals that we can see in all of these national parks, but there are 5 big ones. They're known as the Big 5. The reason why we call these the Big 5 isn't that they're the biggest, obviously the elephant is, but there are bigger animals than this. It's more so that these are the most difficult to hunt historically. So when we're originally thinking about safari back in the day, not even that long ago, kind of like pre-1980s, these are the Big 5 because they are the most difficult to kill, or the most likely to kill you while you try to kill them. So people, when they're talking about safari, they generally want to see all of the Big 5. Remember, there is no guarantee to seeing any of the animals at any given point. You could have the best guide, be in the best position, at the best time of year, and that literally nothing could happen. So there's no guarantee on safari. All that you can really do is really hope to be at the best place, at that best time of year, with that best safari guide, and then hope that the conditions match and everything works out. There's only 2 ways to get more, basically have more luck on safari, right? And I look at it this way, is that you can basically buy more time. You just need to buy more time on safari. Because again, you never know what's gonna happen. It could be a completely dead day. So if you wanna guarantee good sightings, you need more time, because more time equals more luck. And it really all just comes down to luck.
Which among the Big 5 is the hardest to find?
Leopard.
Leopard.
Yeah, leopard.
I thought it's gonna be rhino.
Well, I mean, rhino, when you see a rhino, it's there. It's like, it's big and it takes up the whole area. A leopard can, and I've had this happen, a leopard can be 3 feet away from you and you won't even know that it's there. They're very difficult to find. I have the best natural camouflage I've ever seen of anything. But rhino, I would say, are very difficult to find in most places. When you know that they're there, like easily you'll find them. But you could have a place that has a very high density of leopard, and like there could be 5 around you and you wouldn't even know that they're there.
See.
So what's the difference? Why do we care? But with national parks, we have, being public, obviously, we have some kind of some limitations, obviously. So we can only be in the park from 6 a.m. to 6 p.m. That's very strict. It's open to the public, so absolutely anyone can go in. There's no off-roading. It's very much stuck on those roads. There's no vehicle limits per sighting, and so this can be a bit of a problem, and this can create a bit of a safari traffic jam. The upside, though, is that they're national parks for a reason. They're beautiful. The game is there, the animals are there. Pretty cost effective too, and you can do a lot with them. Then we have conservancies, and again, all of these are different conservancies. They all have their different rules and regulations, but generally this is how it works. They're all private land. There's no time limits. So we can start at 5 in the morning and we can go all the way up till 9, 10 o'clock at night. We can even do night safaris, which are really fun, which can be absolutely crazy. Usually the most interesting stuff happens at night, lion hunts, etc., etc. It's only open for guests who are staying at the lodge. This is the most crucial thing. So you can imagine there's very few vehicles that are in this very large area. So essentially you get a much more exclusive experience. And with that, if you have a really good sighting, say like a lion hunt or something like that, or a leopard on a kill, whatever it is, then generally we are limiting that to 2 vehicles per sighting. So there's no kind of crowding or anything like that. We can also do walking safaris, which are crazy, really fun. And usually you don't see very much, but what you do see is really interesting. And I find that especially because you're going on a vehicle a lot of the time, you're missing a lot of the really small stuff. It's really interesting to kind of sit down and just spend like 20 minutes with a leopard tortoise.
About the walking safari, could you tell us about the safety?
It's very safe. There are, in Kenya specifically, there are different levels of accreditation. So bronze, silver, and gold. And only the most qualified individuals will be qualified to, or will be able to lead these walking safaris. It takes years and years and years of training to get there. And there's a very rigorous code in terms of what people need to do in order to ensure their safety and their clients' safety as well. Every single walking safari is going to have an armed guide with them, sometimes even two. And they're all very, very well trained on those weapons, so it is safe. Of course, you will hear of incidents that occur with walking safari, but those usually it's because the client basically did not follow the rules. So before you go into a walking safari, there's always a half-hour brief on what to expect, what to do in case of ABC, and you have to follow that to the rule.
And many travelers are also curious about Kenya's culture. What cultural experiences or traditions would you encourage visitors to explore? Because there's the Maasai village, I know, and it's very popular. So can you tell us more about that?
So the Maasai are absolutely fantastic tribe that lives on both Kenya and Tanzania. They don't recognize the government of either, and they kind of just walk across the border willy-nilly. But they live much more traditionally than most other cultures. So there's coming of age ceremonies, which you're able to, if you're lucky and you're kind of going through a village on that particular day, then you can see that, where they might be, drinking the cow's blood, which is a very, interesting traditional practice. I think what's really interesting in particular is the Samburu culture up in the far north. They have these wailing wells in the far north, where these women will sing as they're drawing the water and washing the clothes. So there's tons of different things that you can take advantage of, but many of them are just festivities and special days that you have to be a little bit more lucky.
I just want to know about the safety overall in Kenya. So how safe is Kenya for international tourists, including solo travelers or families, and are there any health precautions travelers should take?
So health precautions right off the bat, you need your yellow fever vaccination. I think kids under a certain age are exempt.
What's the age limit?
Off the top of my head, I believe it's 10 or 12. It's around there. Yeah, obviously malaria. You should be getting anti-malarial medication. And then in terms of practical safety, I mean, there's always a neighborhood in every single city where you have to be careful. As long as you are walking around with a guide, and then also, not walking around at night. But that would be the same as with any unknown city or a city that you're not familiar with. But keep in mind is that the bulk of the time is that once you're out of safari, which is going to be out of Nairobi on safari, which is going to be the bulk of your time, there's no one out there. There's just you and the animals. So the only aspect that you need to really consider is, animal behavior. And every single time that you walk into a safari lodge, essentially they will say, okay, these are the rules. And so as long as people follow those specifically, then you'll never find an incident ever. It's really quite simple. So an ETA is required. This is replaced a visa that Kenya was running for years, and then quite in the last 2 years or so, they've switched it to be an ETA, which you just get online. It's really, really simple. It takes about 3 business days to process, sometimes less. And there is yellow fever vaccination required. And remember now that yellow fever used to be only valid for 10 years. Now it's valid for your entire life. So you can also, if you're trying to combine Kenya with multiple countries in East Africa, we also have an East African visa, and this is a pretty new one. Just note that this does not include Tanzania. The Tanzanians didn't sign up to be a part of this. So if you're combining with Uganda and Rwanda, obviously like gorilla trekking, that's going to be a really good option for you because it's going to save you some money. It takes longer to process. It's only valid for 90 days. And then let's say, for example, that you were to go to, start in Kenya, go to Uganda, go to Tanzania, and then go back to Kenya for your departure flight. That's not going to work. As soon as you depart that space, the East African visa, those 3 countries, then it's no longer valid, and you have to reapply for a Kenyan visa to get back into it. So it's kind of a specific situation for a visa, but it's a good thing to know ahead of time. pretty much a year-round destination. If there's any one month I would try to avoid, though, it would be April. That's going to be the bulk of the rainy season. That's where they get the vast majority of their rains. It's not that it's necessarily going to be like really, really rainy the entire time. It'll be pretty rainy, but a lot of the issues come down to really poor road conditions at that point. Especially in these like really remote safari locations. But we can kind of think of it into two parts, right? So we have the dry season and the wet season. So dry season is generally the best time of year for safari. And the reason for that, which in this sense is the main dry season is going to be from June to October, and then we have a much shorter one, which is January to mid-March-ish. And then again, the main wet season is going to be from March to May, late March to May. And then there's a smaller one from November to December. I find November is not a great time for safari, but December starts to pick up again. The reason why we're looking at the dry season specifically for like this best time of year for safari is really quite simple, is that animals, as with all things, need water to exist. If there is water everywhere, then animals can drink from everywhere. So there's puddles, there's, like water, there's rivers that are sometimes seasonal. They only exist in the wet season, but essentially if the water is everywhere, then animals are not really desperate for it, obviously. So for that reason, in the wet season, they're kind of spread out over a very, very large area. So that makes them a bit harder to see, obviously. Whereas in the dry season, when all of that water dries up, basically there's no water in these puddles. We have a few reliable year-round water holes and rivers that the animals know where those are. We know where those water holes are too. So it just makes it all much, much easier for it to all come together, essentially. So we have to work much less in order to find the animals because they kind of come to us. And all of the action just really happens around the water holes. So the dry season, you're going to have higher prices, and you're also going to be seeing more visitors to the park. So you can get kind of this vehicle traffic. The wet season is nice because for a number of reasons, notwithstanding the road conditions and the vehicles that can get stuck in there. And then also calving is occurring during the wet season as well. So if you have clients that want cute pictures of cute babies, then this is a really good time of year too. And also there's less vehicles in the park, so that means we get that benefit too.
And sustainability is a growing focus in tourism. How is Kenya encouraging responsible travel, and how can visitors support local communities and conservation efforts?
The KWF, or the Kenyan Wildlife Fund specifically, has been doing a lot in terms of conservation recently, and the Kenyan government has been vastly increasing its park fees in recent years. And that's for twofold. Number one, to reduce the overall numbers of people in the park, just because it was getting quite crowded. Yeah. So the costs in certain parks, most parks, will go up soon. But all of that money is just going to be redirected back into conservation as well. So we're kind of reducing human footprint, but then we're putting it all back in too. So it's twofold.
So let's just talk briefly about food in Kenya.
Yeah.
Are there any dishes or food experiences travelers shouldn't miss?
A lot of the food in Kenya pays homage to Indian cuisine because there is a large Indian culture there and a large Indian diaspora that's there. So you can see a lot of biryani. My favorite there, it's chapati, which is essentially this flatbread, and maharagwa, which is Swahili for beans. So it's just chapati and beans. And then if you throw a little bit of coconut in there, it's like, there's also pap, or ugali is another word for it. So it's like this corn mash that you dip into a sauce and then you eat it. It's very, very filling and very traditional. So those are two that I would always go to.
So for travelers looking for something different, what are some activities or destinations in Kenya that go beyond safari experience?
Yeah, well, the Aberdare Mountains, definitely, being able to get out of that vehicle and hike a lot. There's actually, and this is definitely for the more adventurous, Kenya just started first hiking trail that goes all the way from the north of the country to the south of the country. So you can actually walk the entire way across Kenya now with an accredited guide, so that's quite fun. Mount Kenya, if you're more adventurous, and there's 3 peaks on Mount Kenya. The highest one you definitely need to be like a skilled mountaineer, but there is a smaller one where it's very difficult, but you can also do some excellent hiking in there too. Anything where you're getting out of a vehicle, honestly. And we were talking about Lamu with the Swahili culture.
Yeah.
So if you're able to experience that, that's a bit of a blend of African, Indian, Portuguese, British, and Arabic influences. So you can see a little bit of everything in that way.
What can you say to our Trip2Go travelers who are thinking of going to Kenya soon?
Definitely go now. And like the thing is that Africa is definitely, people will look at it, and Kenya specifically, people will look at it as a place where you only go once to like hit it off of your bucket list. That's what I thought. And there's something called the Africa bug, which isn't as deadly as it sounds. It's something that we catch when we go to the continent, and it just makes you always want to return and check it out again and again and again. There's just something magical about it, and you know, on paper, the African safari in Kenya, you know, it can look a little bit daunting in terms of the cost, but these places aren't going anywhere anytime soon. And so if you're looking at experiencing that, it is worth saving up for a year and kind of like pocketing that money, not going on as much of an intense trip this year, and then maybe saving 1 or 2 years and making sure that you get that experience, because it is mind-blowing.
Yeah.
And it's life-changing for everyone. It's definitely worth it. Yeah, definitely worth it.
That was such an awesome conversation about Kenya. It's clearly a destination filled with unforgettable experiences, incredible biodiversity, and a deep sense of cultural pride. Once again, thank you, Mr. Evan Trippel, for being with us today and for sharing your expertise. If you have more questions or want to learn more, be sure to follow Trip2Go for more destination spotlights just like this one. Thank you for tuning in. We'll see you guys on our next one, and happy travels from all of us at Trip2Go.